Good to go.
She's very trying.
Well, welcome to the February 13th meeting of the Tompkins County Budget, Capital, and Personnel Committee. Glad to have folks here. This is our new rendition for 2025, in which we have 6 members. 4 of them are here. We're expecting 2.
Can you please use your microphone, please?
Oh, that's what you were trying to signal me. I apologize.
He doesn't read sign language.
Just holler out, you know, or whack me a side of the head or something. Again, we have 6 members, and we have 5 of them here. Veronica's just joined us. And I think we will be joined by Shauna Black fairly soon. I think we'll start with the minutes of January 9th. Someone want to move those? Deborah? Lee? Discussion. All those in favor? Any opposed? That's unanimous. Are there any changes to the agenda? We have departmental goals on our desk from administration, so I guess that will be discussed under the administrator's report, assuming we have an administrator here with us today. Do we have any public comment this morning? No. As far as my report is concerned, I was just speaking before the meeting with Katrina McCloy, mentioned that we've just been joined by Shauna Black, so we have the full committee here in person. I was speaking with Katrina McCloy ahead of the meeting, and we need to find a date for our annual budget retreat in April, and we've been usually having it on the last, or the 4th Tuesday, but there are 5 Tuesdays in April this year, and I'm going to suggest that we do it on the 30th, and I wondered what the rest of you feel. 30th of April. Deborah?
I think that we should have it as late as possible to give administration an opportunity to be ready for us.
Makes sense. Okay, well, we'll try for that then, if that's, apparently administration asked her to try to find a date for us. Morning, Corsa. Our county administrator has joined us.
Yes, sorry for being late.
So we're talking about the budget retreat for the last Tuesday in April. We have a resolution for the appointment to the Greater Tompkins County Municipal Healthcare Consortium. I believe that's Shauna, right?
Yep. So, thank you for your service.
Okay, does anyone want to move that? Move that. Is there a second? Seconded by Deborah. Any discussion? We need an executive session to discuss her qualifications? I guess not.
That would be fun.
Ready to
There's
vote?
some dirt.
Ready to vote? All those in favor? That's unanimous. And again, Shauna, we appreciate your stepping up to help us with that.
Happy to help.
Next is, I think we're going to hear from Veronica on the Workforce Diversity and Inclusion Committee.
Yes, although I have no report, although I think hopefully there are advisory board appointments to the committee on this agenda.
Yes, there are, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, so that's the only relevant thing when it comes.
Would you like us to take those now?
Sure. I'm sorry, I don't have the agenda in front of me because I'm struggling to
well,
get
we
on
have
the
John
Wi-Fi, but
Halyachik, III to an undesignated seat, and Lillian Isaacs to an undesignated seat.
Yes.
You want to move those?
Sure, I'll move those two appointments.
Is there a second? Randy, do we need discussion about those? Ready to vote? You want to vote on both of them? All those in favor? Are there any opposed? That's unanimous. Anything else, Veronica? Questions for Veronica? Let's go to our county administrator for a report.
Okay, so, good morning.
Good morning.
The item that we're looking at and discussing right now is the initial budget retreat. We have invited someone from the city budget office to help us to facilitate some aspect of better practice in terms of budget preparation and engagement. I believe Norma sent out some date and looking for options from all of you in terms of your availability. February 28th was our first proposed date. It's not going to work because some of the key departments and legislators are not going to be available. So we'll be pushing that to March, and I'm sure you guys have the date. We are still going through the process to agree on what date will work. I believe we have March 18th and another date that we are considering at the moment. So that will be communicated to all of you. So that's what we're working on right now.
So that's the retreat where we're going to have the department heads and us hear from the budget consultant that
Yes.
we're bringing in. So you're suggesting the 28th of February?
No,
sorry, I
28th February.
misunderstood then.
28th February was the first proposed date that we sent out.
Okay,
But
that didn't
a
work.
number of key departments are not going to be available as well as the legislators, so that is not going to work. And I believe we sent out March 18th, and I haven't got a confirmation from Norma yet if that is a set date, because we're still coordinating with everybody else to check availability, and we should get that wrapped up before the end of the week.
What time would that be?
We're looking at 4 hours in the afternoon.
That was the date, if they do it on Tuesday, March 18th, I would just point out that that would be before the legislature meeting. So that would make a very, very long day.
Yes, it would.
Yeah, and I think we did discuss that, making sure it doesn't conflict with the legislative meeting day, so.
Because that would go till, our meetings are sometimes going to 9 and 10 o'clock.
Yeah,
So, we could be talking about 7 or 8 hours here.
absolutely.
That's not, I don't think that's idealistic for everybody.
I answered a poll last night. I think there were a couple of other dates on there
Yes.
later in March. I don't know.
Absolutely.
Well, let's keep,
So if you have received a poll, just answer and let us know your availability. We are hoping to get that wrapped up because we need to confirm the date internally so that we can let this gentleman from the state know, and they can also prepare to be here. So they gave us the availability number of days, and we are working to agree on our date, and then let them, they can also work on their part.
we appreciate your department's working on that. I know
Thank you.
scheduling for so many people is not easy.
It's hard.
So Mike, I have a question about that. I actually have that budget is March 18th, 9 to 11. Is that true as well, or do I have my dates messed up?
That's,
BCP should be on Thursday.
Oh, well, then I had the wrong date. Okay. Because that would have really been a doozy. But,
Oh, you can't spend too much time in paradise.
no, we can't.
all
Okay.
right, well, we all need to pay attention and try to figure out a date with administration staff. But that was a request from this committee, so we really need to try to be there. Anything else for Corsa? Or from Corsa?
No, we are all set.
Any questions? All right, let's go to Lori Scarrett, our Director of Finance.
Good morning. I have several quarterly reports for you today. I believe the first one is sales tax. I have on here both the monthly for December and also the fourth quarter. For today, I'll just go over the fourth quarter because that does include December as well. And for some reason, you're not seeing it. Hang on a second.
Yeah, I think the packet only has December.
Really?
Well, this is all I've got. Yeah.
Oh, this is the quarter.
Oh, okay, year-to-date? All
Yeah.
right. Thank you, sorry.
Yeah, I think so, because it's not showing. Okay. Yep. And if you close this, Thank you. Okay, so for the fourth quarter, well, we'll start with December. This fourth quarter is year-to-date over last year. Overall, for the whole county, it was up 0.56%. The county share mirrors that at 0.56%. The municipalities had a loss of 1.11%, and the city of Ithaca had a gain of 2.44%. And I do have the state comptroller's report for the year-over-year 24 results, and from Comptroller DiNapoli, he said this was the slowest annual growth since the COVID-19 pandemic decline in 2020, and was less than half of the average pre-pandemic growth rate, 3.8%, of 2011 to 2019 following the Great Recession. He further stated that sales tax growth slowed in 2024, and many counties and cities even experienced declines. This slowing growth, combined with economic risks and potential changes at the federal level, calls for careful budgeting on the part of local officials to effectively navigate these uncertain times. So I guess that's not the greatest news, but any questions on sales tax?
Where did we fit in on that report?
So over year, we're at 0.56%.
So we're down.
Well, we're up less than 1%.
Less than 1%, okay.
And we're down over somewhere between $200,000 and $300,000 from budget.
County
Yes.
share, yeah. I got a question for you, Lori.
Yep.
Remind me educationally here, allocated sales tax, what is that allocated toward? Where you take the,
Yeah, there's a whole sales tax distribution formula. Some of it goes to the city, some of it goes to different agencies. So we have one that's the gross, that's the amount budgeted, and then the allocated.
that comes off the top and then the unallocated. So some of the agencies we fund come out of that sales tax
Right.
allocation.
Right.
And then one of the other things I noticed on it, just trivia, I guess, but the town and village shares were down about $200,000, maybe a little over. The city of Ithaca was up $400,000. Does that reflect where the sales tax is being generated?
Yeah.
Oh, the shift of, for instance, hotels and anchor stores down to Elmira Road is having an impact outside of the city. In Deborah's district. In your district.
Yes, particularly in my district.
Shauna?
So it appears like that we are out of the time frame that whenever I started as a legislature, we used to see 8 to 12%, 15% sometimes increases from the year over. I'd also like to let my colleagues know that whenever the governor's budget came out and whenever NISAC did a review, one of the things that they noted is that for casino revenue, there could be some new casinos opening up in New York City, which would deduct from the casino revenue funds that we could see locally. So I think we see about $1 million every year And they're assuming that people will stay in New York City instead of coming to the outskirts to give away their money.
Thanks for mentioning that. You know, I've been calling in the wilderness for a long time that just don't rely on the casino revenues.
And we don't. I mean, it's nice to have, but we don't.
We've been doing some in the budget. Randy?
Yes, on the unallocated sales tax revenue budget estimate, so you're saying that from the sales tax collection, a certain amount of that money is allocated somewhere, like 2 million and change. At some point, could I just get a list of what that is?
Sure.
No hurry now.
I think you already have it, but I'll send it to you again. It's that, there's that flow chart.
I saw that.
It's in there. It's on that. But I'll certainly send it to you again.
I've got that.
Okay,
And
it's on there.
very confusing. I need to understand that, but, so my question is, so the county is receiving 45 million roughly in our budget as our gross estimate, but 2 million is going someplace else.
Right.
So I'd just like to know specifically how
Right.
much money is going to each one.
Okay, we can
And
get
how
to
is
that.
Is that a policy, or how is that done? I don't know.
There's a contract.
Yeah, so the
So
legislator
part of
from
that
many
goes to
years ago.
TCAT maybe, or, I'm just curious how it's distributed, that's all.
Yeah, the legislature from many years ago, I don't know what year it was, developed this formula that flow chart depicts, and that's what we follow when we do the distribution. But I'll be happy to send you that information.
Okay, yeah, I've got that flow chart, and, yeah, it's a mess.
Deborah?
It's important to remember that those distributions are pursuant to an agreement between the city and the county, which apparently no one seems to have a lot of appetite for revisiting.
I do, but I'm just, I know. But I don't understand.
You're a
it, so
rugged
it's like-
individualist, Randy.
So, I just want to also add that the Association of Towns are lobbying the state to include in the state budget permanent allocation of sales tax to towns. So that is coming in case the state accept that into their 2025-2026 budget proposals. We may be required by law to further distribute to the towns.
Don't we already do that? Based on where purchases are made and sales tax is generated?
No, usually I think what you have here is like locally agreed distribution, but it's not comprehensive as to the whole of the state. So now they are basically asking for the state to recognize that distribution to the towns. And if, for example, if those percentages, if that is approved and the percentages are higher than our current distribution, we have to adjust our current distribution.
What is the formula they're asking for?
Nobody knows yet. They just submitted a proposal to the governors of, to the Assembly and Senate to consider permanent allocation of sales tax revenue to towns.
Go ahead, Lori.
Not all counties distribute their sales tax. They don't all share it. So that's where that's coming from.
Right.
Tompkins County does, but not all counties do.
I'm just puzzled as to how, if we're distributing sales tax according to where the sales tax is generated, I'm trying to understand how we could be negatively impacted by a state regulation or law unless that regulation or law uses a formula other than where the sales are generated.
Lori?
Well, I was just going to say, I think part of the formula of the sales tax distribution also includes population. So currently this one, the one that we use, it also includes population.
Okay.
So that could vary where, not necessarily 100% where it was generated.
Corsa?
No, I just wanted to add from what Lori said, your current distribution is Tompkins County unique. Most county doesn't distribute anything at all. So if it's adopted and it's broad, then maybe we're distributing too much, or maybe we're distributing too less, or we may decide to stick to our formula because of the agreements that we have already in place. But wherever it falls, we will not be greatly impacted because of what we are already doing. But it's something that might affect our budget planning in case it is adapted and is higher distribution than what we already do.
Is that going to be in the budget?
It being proposed, but nobody knows if it will be accepted yet.
Thank you.
NISAC, I think, is hugely against it, but they're fighting it at the background, so we'll see where it lands.
Lori, you're exactly right. All the counties do something different. You take Cortland, for example. They distribute according to their assessed value in the towns, and that's why Cortlandville gets so much more money than the other towns in Cortland County. We have always done population, which to me is the fairest way of doing it. But I don't know if the town proposal gets anywhere, and it may or may not, I would think. The question is, does that attack the villages' shares that we share with the towns and villages? Deborah?
So if we're doing it by population, how is the city doing so much better than the rest of the county? Because that wasn't my impression that the city population was necessarily growing that much more than the rest of the county.
But where it's the location where the transaction takes place for a lot of things. For bigger items, it's where the person lives, like appliances and cars. But
So we have two different rules depending on what kind of a sale it is?
yeah, because when you buy a lunch in downtown Ithaca, they can't keep track of where you live. But if you do register a motor vehicle, they know where you live.
So we did this for administrative convenience?
But that's just for county,
Well,
for
but you
an
see,
automobile.
it's because of the difference between the counties and the cities. Cities, they're treated the same, and the cities have the right to preempt a portion of the sales tax that's generated in the county for their use. And
That's the asterisks, 1.5, asterisked
Yep.
1.5%?
And then the other 1%, which was the subject of the negotiations in the contract many years ago, decided how the other 1% would be split, or else the city could have preempted its share of that as well. Shauna?
Screwed it.
I think what will be interesting to see is if in fact tariffs go into effect, if we're going to see people spending less because they can't afford it, or where we're going to see our revenues. Because, my guess is if we see 25% tariffs on certain things, people probably will not be buying cars or whatever is coming from those imports. And we could see fewer tax revenue from that, or sales tax revenue.
Randy?
And they could be buying more American cars too, that's possible, right? That's one of the end results, is that the cars here would be more attractive for that. Can you remind me what our budget was for '25 for sales tax? And you can just send me an email, I don't need it right now. Just
Okay.
curious.
Yeah, I'll send it.
2 years ago, right? Don't we set the sales tax based on what the receipts were 2 budgets prior?
Well, I think in the
And a rule of
past,
thumb?
we've used the sales tax trends in previous years, and I seem to recall that we were fairly conservative in not budgeting for any kind of a substantial increase, but I'm not sure that we budgeted for it to go down by any substantial amount. But I guess we'll just have to wait till Lori sends the numbers.
Yeah, that's my recollection as well. We kept it the same as the last year, but I'll double check that and get that number to you.
Thank you.
And I would also mention on the tariffs that we have a lot of people from Canada that come in and shop in America, particularly in the Buffalo area. They cross the Peace Bridge and come in here and shop. Will that stop? Will we stop generating that revenue? Deborah?
Yeah, I think the backlash in Canada has been pretty stiff. I've seen pictures online of the Peace Bridge, I guess they now call it the Peace Arch, that runs between Fort Erie and Buffalo. And there have been absolutely no cars coming over from Canada to the United States, which is not generally the case. I don't know how long that'll last. I'm not sure that will affect us here in Tompkins County, but it's going to be hard on Erie County.
Okay, anything else on sales tax, folks? Lori, you want to talk to us about casino revenues?
Sure. So, let's see. There we go. So casino revenue, I've included in your packet both the information for September and December. As I've explained to you before, the delay when we receive the casino money information is a little odd, and so depending how the agenda falls, whether I can get it to you or not. So you have it in the packet for September, but it is also reflected here through December. So we'll just look at December's for now. As you can see on the graph, fourth quarter came in at 614,173. So the entire year for 2024 is higher than has previously been for the other past few years. And then compared to our budget in 2024, we budgeted 2.1 million and we received 2.4 million. By casino, you can see that both Del Lago and Tioga pretty flat, staying the same over the past few years with a slight increase. You can see in 2022, it was up a little bit higher. I think that's it for that one. Any questions on casinos?
Looks like the 200,000 positive offset the sales tax.
And it's also interesting, I think somebody asked me if sports betting was included in the casino revenue, and it is. And there's actually a very interesting report on the website of all of the different dollar amounts by casino, by type, whether it's poker tables, gaming, sports betting, whatever. So I can share that with you if you're interested as well.
It's interesting because the line looks pretty flat. But I can't, if there's any spike with the sports.
The sports betting is not their moneymaker,
No.
surprisingly. I was surprised when I saw that information. It's the slot machines.
Oh, you're kidding. Oh, I can't imagine anything more boring than sitting there like that.
You've got lots of time to do that after January.
I would just also add, not only are there casinos possibly in New York City, but there's still that discussion about another one in Rochester. The Indians, the Native Americans, I should say. Anything else on this, Lori?
I don't think so.
All right, how about cannabis?
Cannabis is next, yes.
All the vices.
Yep. And it's not showing, hang on.
I misspoke. It's the cannabis revenue that's offsetting the sales tax. That's where we.
Well, thank God there's no tariffs on pot.
Yeah. So, Before you, there is the graphs for the cannabis tax, and you can see that this past quarter, September through November of 2024, is the best quarter we've had to date. Town of Dryden received $33,000, City of Ithaca $67,000, and Tompkins County $33,000. And that's your graph of how things have gone over the past year and a half, I guess it is.
Veronica?
Are the big fluctuations just about individual dispensaries opening and closing?
I think what happened was in the summer
Or
last
opening and-
winter.
I don't know what's
Somebody
happening.
closed.
William Jane was
Yeah.
closed for remodeling.
And there's some new ones now, too. When we started this, I think there was one dispensary, and now there's 4.
Is there a maximum number the county's allowed anyways? Is there something like 5 we could have in Tompkins? Do you know that?
I don't know that. Do you know that one? How many? Yeah, I don't know. I can find out if there's a maximum.
Yeah, I haven't heard that, but
I seem to recall that when they were considering this bill and in the immediate aftermath of its passage, the theory was that they would limit the number of these licensed dispensaries and award them to members of populations or individuals who had been disadvantaged by the possession laws we had before. And so my understanding was that getting that office in Albany up and running and administering that legislative strategy was what slowed everything down, and it took forever for us to get our first dispensary. And then all of a sudden, it was like the floodgates open, and there didn't seem to be any restriction on these places. So I really have no idea what's going on, and that actually, I know Maury has absolutely nothing to do these days, but at some point, that might be something that our legal office could look into and try to figure out what exactly is going on, because I've been quite surprised to see how many of these places have opened in the last year or so.
Shauna?
That's definitely something that we've talked about in public safety, Deborah, is that there are a handful of places, I think there are 3 or 4 that are actual licensed here in Ithaca and in Dryden, and they've gone through the correct process. They're going through New York State distributors, they're going through the packaging laws so that, the cannabis products are not marketed towards kids. They're harder to open. And then there are other stores. Confirmed. And then there are other stores that are not licensed. They're opening up in trailers. And my guess is they're probably not taking tax revenue either. And so, from my end, I'm concerned about the fact that there are some places that have gone by the law, that have done what they need to do, that have paid the $15,000 for a registration or a license, and other places that have not gone by the book and they continue to operate, not collect taxes, and who knows how safe their product actually is. So I would love for us to take a look and actually talk about the enforcement of closing these places down if we need to.
So we're back to sticker stores, basically.
Yeah, that's right.
I think Rich is going to have that on the public safety agenda.
Oh, good.
There was some mention on it here recently.
I do think there will continue to be competition with the legal dispensaries from the black market, which will probably sell less expensively.
Yeah, I was
Maury?
just going to add, we have done some work on that. There is a group that has been, put together, a form of local law for enforcement purposes that we're working with, but it's still in the formative stage and is something that we would need to pick up. But the sheriff's office has been involved, and others in, there are issues, who would be doing the inspecting, who would be, doing all the work that's involved in that. If you remember our Tupa case that went to the Appellate Division, 3rd Department, shows how much work goes into just one ticket. So, but we're working on it.
Shauna?
Yeah, I'll just follow up by saying about, I want to say 2 years ago, there was a conversation with the Assistant Attorney General out of Binghamton. I believe her name is Stephanie. And she actually had the Board of Health, Frank Krupa, gather some of the illegally dispensaries and provide names and addresses. And she came in there and actually closed the places down and put like the closed sign, but I don't know what ended up coming from that. And my guess is a lot of those have reopened.
Right. That's typically what happens,
Okay.
unfortunately.
Yeah.
I will point out one of the reasons I think that the Dryden Dispensary is producing as much income as it is. Not only was it first, but it has a drive-through. And it's the only one that has a drive-through, for whatever opinion we have of that, but apparently people can call ahead and with orders and then pick them up at the drive-through.
Drugstores have them, why not? Right?
I'd like to add that that particular individual is a Newfield graduate.
No,
Say what?
Newfield.
The person who owns the dry dispensary is a Newfield graduate, so
Go Newfield.
a young man.
Okay, our next stop is cash and investment report.
Yeah, so this is as of December 31st. The first graph shows where we have the different banks that we utilize. And as we've seen all along, Tompkins Community has the vast majority of our money. But you can see that that blue is getting a little bit less, and other banks are getting a little bit more share of the pie. We're really working with the banks to increase the interest rates, particularly we were looking pretty heavily investing in CDs. So Community Bank did step up, and we have got quite a bit of money with them now, which is different than we have in the past.
Are they the gray ones? I can't.
I'm sorry, Community is the yellow, 18 million.
Okay, and so, wait, that's Tompkins Community Bank?
The blue, this big blue section
Oh.
is Tompkins, and then the
So which
yellow.
one is New York Class? I can't tell because this is black and white and.
Yeah, New York Class is one of the sliver at the top, this 4.792.
And the gray one is what?
The gray is Shamong.
Okay, thank you.
So this is the, Randy has a question.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see your hand, Randy, go ahead.
I was noticing that, now I got to find it, where was that? The monthly interest earnings really dropped a lot since July. And is that because the interest rate or reductions from, I mean, you peaked at 375,000 in July, but November dropped over half, 50%. Interest rates didn't drop that much, so I'm just curious.
Yeah, so there was two things going on with interest earnings. One being that the interest rates were dropping, and two, we were purposely, because we were anticipating further interest rate declines, we were doing some long-term investing and laddering of the CDs. So those were at lower rates. And the third thing I should say is our cash flow is decreasing, as we knew was going to happen with the outflow of the ending of the ARPA money. So back to the cash balances by investment type. Most of our money is in the checking, and you can see here that we have decreased the amount over time in money markets because of the lower interest rates there, although some of the banks have stepped up and increased those. We have also taken quite a bit out of New York Class, just as I talked about, so that we could start laddering those investments into longer-term CDs to preserve some of those higher rates in the anticipated declining rate environment. We might need to relook at that again now and take a little bit different strategy based on what's coming. These are the different rates from different CDs. You can see we have a bunch of them all over the place. With the money markets, we do have one bank that's giving us a pretty high 4% on a money market, which is pretty uncommon.
May I ask?
Sure.
What's the range of maturities on those CDs?
I think the longest one we have is 18 months.
Oh, nice. Thank you.
And the shortest was 3 months. So, so here's the depiction of the monthly cash balance, and you can see the trend line is the dotted line. You can see that that is declining, as we just spoke about. And the monthly interest earnings, we already discussed, so. I think that's, oh, and the budget to actual, we budgeted $1 million.
Got a question?
Oh, who does?
Randy?
Finish that, and then I'll ask my question.
Okay. The budgeted interest earnings at $1 million, and we have earned $3.3 million for 2024. And next year, we budgeted $2.3 million.
That's going to be a challenge, I'm sure. My question is on the checking account for, first I'll say Tompkins Community Bank is a great bank. But for years, we kept a lot of money in their bank, in the checking account, and they paid us basically nothing for that money. Banks understand very clearly, every day they look at the average balances of every account. They know that the average balance of Tompkins County is 30 million, 40 million, whatever that number is. Is there any reason they aren't coming table and paying us money on our checking account? They should be paying something for that money. They're loaning it out. That's how banks work. They know exactly how much money they have, and they balance that. So have they offered anything?
Yes, so we've been working with Tompkins on increasing some rates, and they were one of the ones that increased the money market rate. I think you need to keep in mind on the checking, that money is not sitting there. It's usually in, out, in, out, in, out, up, down, all over the place. This is just a depiction of one day. And it could have, lots of things could have been happening that day. You know, maybe we were moving money out of to a CD, or, you know, in between flux, it sits in that sitting account for one day, in the checking account for one day. So it's just a picture in time, and that checking account varies day to day. If I gave you the graph of the balance of the checking account, it'd be all over the place. So.
But they could run a report for you and tell you very clearly what the average balance is.
Yes.
So that's how they calculate their money. But thank you.
Go ahead, Lori.
Let's see, I think that's it for the investment. And next was the contingency. Struggling.
There it is.
There it is, tiny, but there it is. Sorry about that. So the contingency account here shows that your expenditures were $1.17 million, and we had $356 remaining in the contingency account at the end of the year.
Deborah?
Well, that's new and exciting, because
Yes.
usually we have to add. But I'm curious, when we put stuff in contingency and we don't use it all, does the balance just go back in the general fund? And it doesn't, I mean, I know there's some holdovers on closing out the books for the year, which is why we don't get our audit until pretty late. But anything that comes out of contingent after January 1st would come out of this year's contingent.
Correct.
And not last.
Correct.
Okay, I just want to be sure I understand that. Thank you.
Randy?
So we started 2024 with the combination of those two in our budget for contingency. So all the rest went back into the general fund. What's our budget for 2025?
The budget for 2025 was $1.3 million.
Great.
We did set aside or earmark 3 items already, that 85,000 forget about during the budget process, the GIS system of $94,000 and $250 for Dewar geothermal. It has not been spent. We've just earmarked it for 2025.
Thank you.
So that's about 450?
429.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, I think Deborah's exactly right. I can't ever remember a year when we had extra contingency. We normally have to add some.
So I think this deserves a drink.
Or gummy.
Other questions for Lori on that? Anything else you want to bring to our attention, Lori?
Nope, that's it for now. Thank you.
At the casino.
Penny machines.
See, that'll be the next thing. There'll be, if they figure they can make tax on it, there'll be slot machines everywhere. That's the way it used to be back in the early 1900s.
Anywhere you go in Las Vegas, including the airport.
Our next report comes from our Human Resources Commissioner, Ruby Pulliam. Good morning.
Good morning, everyone. Just a short report today. We are continuing our ongoing recruitment efforts for both the Commissioner of Human Resources, okay. That's not a notification.
You're worried.
Not a notification. Commissioner of Whole Health and the Commissioner of the Department of Social Services. We're at the point where we are reviewing job descriptions and gathering input from local community organizations. We hope to have that finalized real soon so we can start the posting. So stay tuned. For the reward and recognition activities for 2025, I just wanted to make you aware of some changes that we've made to adjust to our decreased budget for things. The 25-year club dinner, we will be sending out the save the date information. It's April 17th. What's different this year is we will have current inductees and a guest, as well as a department representative and the legislators only. We will not be sending invitations to past inductees. Past inductees have made up the larger portion of our attendance at those dinners, and with the reductions in our budget, we have to cut somewhere. We still want to honor our current inductees, but we have to do it on a smaller scale. So look for that save the date. The employee picnic will be on August the 13th. We've changed the time to accommodate those employees who can't leave their offices to attend. So it will be from 2 to 6 p.m. at the Tremont Park again, and it is for employees only. We will not have families of employees or guests of employees. It will be for the employees only. Last year, we had an RSVP rate of over 600 people. 500 attended, but they were primarily family members or guests of employees. We still want to do the employee picnic, and the only way we can do that is to restrict it to it, and it is an employee picnic. So the employees will be there. That includes legislators and department heads, but it will not include family members of our employees. Okay, I see looks. I will continue.
Can I just
Sure.
make a couple comments there? One, with the picnic, of course, that is sponsored by us, and that's by the county, the cost of that. The 25-year club, which we've always had the past retirees invited to, they pay tickets for that. Is that a big loser? How much can we get perhaps maybe a breakdown of how much more it would cost if we wanted to invite them?
We can get a breakdown, but since I've been here, they haven't been charged.
No,
The county is a
paid.
part of our reward and recognition budget.
Oh, I thought that they were. Oh, it's just the family
Prior
members and
to,
things?
it's one guest, the inductee and one guest now. But past inductees, since COVID, I believe, when we started this again, it has just been a part of our reward and recognition budget.
Well, I was thinking that in times past that everyone paid for a ticket.
No.
Perhaps we need some more discussion there, but I understand what you're saying. If your budget doesn't have the capacity, it doesn't have the capacity.
Right. We can still give you a breakdown, numbers, whatever you'd like, but we wanted to be able to continue the activities, but yet we have to do it at a smaller scale than we've been doing.
Okay. Shauna?
Is there any way that you can give us a breakdown as well of, for the employee picnic, having a +1, maybe?
Okay, we can try.
Thank you.
The largest costs, have been for the food trucks.
Yeah.
And so we are limiting the number of food trucks that we have as well. So it'll be a couple of food trucks and a dessert truck. The prices for those last year were and it was good. We had a variety of food, but we have to limit those as well.
I know in the past that they hired and had like a barbecue serving. And were the food trucks more or less expensive than that?
More.
More expensive?
Yeah, based upon the comments prior to the reduction in the budget, they wanted more variety, and when you have vegan alternatives or gluten-free alternatives, we were trying to meet everybody's desires. So we just simply can't do everything that we've done right now. We hope in the future years that will change, but for right now, for us to be able to do the events and to basically book the locations, we had to make some changes. This is what we can do now. But we can get you a cost allocation of the food trucks easily, if that's what you would like to see.
That would be very helpful, thanks. Go ahead, Shauna.
I'm sorry, Mike. I'll just add that I think right now, as we've made budget cuts pretty much across the board, the 5%, I think entering into the unknown with so many things, that's the one thing that kind of brings our employees together. It provides connection with our employees, with our department heads. And for me personally, that is the single day that I have the most connection with our employees, and I get to meet their families, which I think is a really important part of our community. And so, it makes me sad to hear that wouldn't happen on that level. And I understand the financial implications, but I would love it if maybe we could figure something out so that we can make that work.
We would too. So I'll get you those numbers, and we'll go from there.
Thank you.
Okay.
They're all coming off. I think they've ordered new ones.
It's disintegrating. And other than that, that's all I have today. We will continue our HR report for the HR actions as far as new hires, training opportunities, those things in March.
Go ahead, Randy.
I just want to thank Corsa for coming to the Community Mental Health Service Board meeting and talking about filling the position of whole health. And you got a lot of comments out of that one. I was so surprised how much and how forward people were with their comments. But thank you, and you handled it well. So thank you.
We're doing our best to incorporate as much as legally possible.
I wondered, Ruby, has the position of county historian been posted yet?
No, it has not.
Okay. And the other thing I just would mention, it's not your department, but your department's been very helpful, and that's the recruitment for the director of the ITCTC, to replace Fernando de Aragon when he retires. And I want to just report that there is a committee from that group meeting. We have a meeting this afternoon by Zoom, and we're expecting to have someone in place by the time he retires or a little before this summer. Larry Workman's been very helpful.
Thank you.
Deborah?
Can you clarify, Mike, is that position part of DPS? Is ITCTC separate? Is the funding stream through the county? I've never quite understood that.
It's one of these sort of mixed. They really, the ITCTC Policy Board is the controlling group. But over the years, they've always asked us to confirm their actions, although they don't have to, like the appointment. And the same with the salary. They're technically, considered county employees for the pensions and other things like that. But we don't. They've usually tracked the white collar group in that position.
Do we pay?
Is that correct, Ruby? What I'm saying?
Do we pay that salary, or does that salary come from another
No,
source?
it comes from the budget of the ITCTC, including the recruitment efforts. We're going to be talking about that this afternoon, how much to spend on advertising and things like that.
So does their revenue come from the state?
State and feds.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else for Ruby? Thank you for your report. Well, we've got some resolutions we need to go through. We have Resolution A, Contingent Fund Appropriations. Speaking of Contingent Fund, County Administration, Professional Services for Health Insurance, Portability and Accountability Act, HIPAA, and Compliance Assessment. That's ID 13056. Someone want to move that? Veronica moves it. Is there a second? Seconded by Shauna. Who wants to discuss this one with us?
I can.
Okay.
It's this is basically a continuation of an effort that we began in 2024, that because of the time the project was started through the compliance office that includes the Chief Equity and Diversity Office and Risk Assessment. It was passed through GO. We're basically asking that the unspent funds from the 2024 budget is carried over to 2025 so that we can continue to complete the project.
Randy?
Thank you, Ruby. I like how this process is done since the county ended rollover a couple years ago. So this is money that was from 24, but I like the way the process goes, that you say, okay, I have this money but now it's going to be allocated to this program. I think it's the right way to do it. So thank you.
Okay, we're ready to vote. Those in favor? Any opposed? That's unanimous. Next, we have another contingent appropriation. Human Resources Department, Professional Services for Coaching and Diversity Training. That's 13079. Someone want to move that one? Moved by Veronica. Is there a second? Seconded by Randy. Discussion? Or you want to talk to us about that one?
Right. This is similar to the one that was just passed. This was a 2024 contract that we initiated to help with some of the employee relations issues that we were having. A couple of the sessions were held, but we were not able to complete the list of activities that we had contracted for. So we have to renew the contract for 2025. So we're simply asking that the unspent funds from that contract is carried over into 2025 so that we can complete those activities.
Any questions? Ready to vote? Those in favor? Any opposed? That's unanimous.
Thank you.
Now we go to change of position. This is Resolution C, County Attorney, ID 13084. Maury? Or someone want to move it, please? Veronica, second by Shauna.
That's just a correction. For some reason, our additional paralegal was budgeted at 35 hours, and this bumps it back to 40 hours, which was what was intended in the first place.
Deborah?
Is there a budget impact, or is this just, I mean, it's not clear. Usually if there's a budget impact, it shows up somewhere in the resolution.
I don't know. I don't think so, because we, there should not be, because the 40 hours was what was supposed to be in the budget.
Okay. I just wanted to clarify if it was budget neutral.
Yep. I understand it was supposed to be there, but was it? I guess that's the question we had. Veronica?
What, correct me if I'm wrong, but we budget for the positions separately from that resolution that lists what are all the positions that the county has, and the error.
That may be true. I just want to be sure that that's what's going on.
Okay. I want to clear, so is it the error was just in that resolution of changes of positions, listing number of hours, but in the budgeting money for it, we budgeted the right amount of money?
Yeah.
That's correct, as I understand it. The resolution, although it's my department, Norma had put it together for us, and she is on vacation, so.
Okay, ready to vote? Those in favor? Any opposed? That's unanimous.
I have one question for Maury. At one point, we had discussed having a program assistant added to your staff, and I think we were going to wait until you had kind of gotten settled in your position. Is your staff adequate for what you have going on in that office?
There'll be a proposal coming
Okay.
soon. It's not.
Okay, I figured. Thank you.
Resolution C, change in positions, recycling and materials management, 13-100. Anyone want to speak to that? Veronica's moved it. There's seconded by Shauna.
I can explain this one if that would be helpful.
Please.
All right. So similar to the situation with the resolution for the change in position with the county attorney's office, this is just correcting an error. In this particular case, this was an error in position ID. So our department currently has 2 recycling driver positions on the books, and budgeted for this year, we have 1 full-time driver and 1 part-time driver. The ID number was switched between the 2 positions. So what essentially happened is we're correcting that error. So our full-time driver, which is a current position, that person will stay at 40 hours, and the other position that should have been reduced to 20 will be reduced down to 20 hours. So it shouldn't have any budget impact. This was budgeted for the year.
Thank you. Should have introduced you, Kat McCarthy, who just spoke to us. Questions? Okay, vote. All in favor? Any opposed?
Oh, sorry, I'm in favor.
You're in favor. We'll count you then. That's unanimous.
Domestic communication, sorry.
Another contingent fund appropriation, replacement pay and terminal pay for the sheriff's office, 13024. Want to move that, somebody? Veronica, second by somebody, Shauna? Mm-hmm. Questions on that one? This is just a fairly standard retirement request that we have to take out of contingency.
Wait. I'm confused.
Did you skip D, Mike?
Yeah, I thought.
Oh, did I skip it? Did I skip one?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was looking at the contingent fund appropriation. Can we do?
Broadband's on the floor right now.
No. I moved the I moved Doc ID 13024 contingent fund appropriation, replacement pay, and
Yeah, that's
terminal
what I
pay
thought we were
reimbursement
talking about.
sheriff's office, because that's what Mike
So we're going to
said.
have to backtrack, that's fine.
Oh, I see the one I skipped. Sorry about that. But can we do F, since that's on the floor? Ready to vote on, or go ahead, Shauna.
I guess I do have a question in wondering, it talks about the sheriff's office, would that be for deputies as well as corrections?
I don't have an answer. Who has an answer for that? Anybody?
I think it could be either.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, because that is definitely a lot of money that we're talking about here, and
Well, it's 5 employees.
yeah, no, I recognize that too.
It was discussed at Public Safety, and I can't remember the details on that, Shauna.
Yeah, I mean, I know that there's, I mean, we can't talk out loud, but yeah.
Right.
There's one person that recently retired that was with us for a long time, so that might be his.
Would Samantha be aware of that or not?
Jesus.
I see her on the screen. And we don't have anybody from the sheriff's office here. Of course, this isn't something that you're aware of, is it?
Yeah.
You
What do
are
you wanna do,
aware or
folks?
you're not aware?
No, I'm not.
Okay.
Randy?
I realize that, these things happen, and it's a course of business, but I'm curious why we couldn't have budgeted for some of this in 2025 versus not. I mean, obviously, some of this expense had already been known.
Maybe, maybe not. I mean, that's the problem, and why I think that generally we take these kind of payments out of contingent, and one of the major reasons we have contingent, because you can't predict. But I take your point, Randy. It's very early in the year,
Yeah.
and
Just to answer Shauna there, to the expense lines, A3113, 51,000, A3150, that would indicate to me that some of it's on the roadside and some of it's on corrections. Two different regular pays.
Yeah. I'm just concerned because it's, I think collectively, almost $500,000. And so,
no, it's 227. You taking it out of contingent and putting it towards those purposes, so add the 184,715.
yeah, you're right, Deborah.
Yeah.
Yep. Well, either way, that's a lot of money.
Still a lot of money.
Well, and part of the problem, going back from the department head level, is that you can get the funding back for the straight pay that went to those that are out, but the department ends up underwriting the backfill expenses. So if you've got a person out on disability and you now have to fill that vacancy, they're coming up with the funds on top of that, and most of the time it's at time and a half because there isn't that extra.
Yeah, that's right.
And if you read the memo, it's that, a lot of it's that 207C thing, which is eating our lunch and has been for years.
Yeah.
I'm going to suggest that we go ahead and pass this, and then let's ask when it comes to the legislature if we could have more discussion. This to me is a Norma Jane question, but I believe she's away at the present time. So maybe she'd be back by the next time this comes up to the legislature, and we could get a fuller answer. Would that be all right with you folks?
Yeah. If we're lucky, she'll come back.
I think she'll be back. All those in favor? Any opposed? That's unanimous. All right, now let's go back to the one I skipped, sorry. resolution from Contingent Fund Appropriation, Department of Planning and Sustainability, Broadband Consulting. That's 13064. That's Resolution D. Someone want to move that? Veronica moves it. Another hand, Shauna. Thank you, two. You've been doing them all.
Been doing all the work in this committee. No, I'm just
I've been pulling my slot machine lever.
Mike, Nick is on the screen.
Yeah, happy to answer questions about this. This is for the funds to pay ECC Technologies that we had in, they've had them under contract here since 2022, and unspent funding from the contract from last year. So still working with them and still working to get a grant agreement from the state for the broadband expansion project we submitted last year. So happy to answer questions.
Nick, that's Nick Hemholt, and I've got a question. Go ahead, you first, Deborah.
Yeah, I want to be sure I understand what's going on here, because usually we move money from contingent fund into another, and it just says decrease expenditure and then increase expenditure. So was this money earmarked in contingent fund for this purpose? It's just unusual wording I'm trying to understand. So decrease expenditure from contingent fund and then increase the same expenditure from professional services. So I assume it had been sitting in.
Yeah, so contingent account is an expense account. So you're just decreasing the balance in that account, and also you're increasing the balance in the professional services account. So this is usually, from my understanding, the right way to do it, because they are all expense accounts.
Okay, I'm just thinking.
Was there another hand, Randy?
Yeah, Nick, maybe you could fill us in just once this contract is done, what are we going to get out of it? And and also, I'm hearing from quite a few residents in my town where broadband has gone through, but they can't connect because the cost to connect is so expensive, and it's got to go under roads, and it's an expense that nobody wants to pick up. And so I'm just curious if this process is going to help with that.
Yeah, so ECC has been helping us in terms of working to identify and secure resources of funding to expand broadband coverage throughout the county, with the exception of Dryden and Caroline, which have their own projects effectively in place. The other 7 towns would be potentially covered through a grant application we have into the New York State Connect All office. So it's possible that some of those locations in your district there would be covered under that. I would assume so, but it would need the exact addresses to confirm that. We have had this application under review for several months now. We have a meeting with the state next week to discuss this and try to apply some pressure to get a decision on this. So yeah, ECC has been helping us throughout that process and providing us with insights and updates at the state level, and also considering what other alternatives we might have if this grant application is not successful. So yeah, ultimately this is, we don't use it. We have get billed, just a few hours a month from them for the work that they do. But if the grant is successful, we would expect that would go up, substantially and would potentially trigger a need for additional management assistance. So, yeah, that's sort of the long and short of it. If you have particular constituents who are interested in knowing where they fit in this project, I'd be happy to connect with them and see if this would potentially help connect them with broadband.
Great, I'll follow up.
Nick, I'm regularly asked questions about this at the Town of Dryden Town Board. How much are we actually applying for this grant?
Approximately $14 million, if
14 million?
I recall correctly. Yeah.
Okay. And this is what we're lobbying for, is this money, is that right?
Yes.
That's what you're telling us. Are there a lot of other applications that we're aware of, or are we a lot of competition, or?
There are a few other counties that applied in this program. We are aware of one county that had initially applied and decided afterwards to withdraw its application. You know, we aren't aware of the state having made any awards publicly. So we're certainly paying close attention. There was a sort of a separate process that just wrapped up relating to the BEAD program, which forgive me, I don't have the acronym at my tip of my tongue here, but this is the federally funded broadband expansion program. Those applications were due on February 7th, so we are cautiously optimistic that following that deadline, the state has a much clearer idea of the sort of statewide picture of what they're looking at in terms of a broadband expansion, and that will hopefully lead them to a decision on the application we've had into them since last spring. So that's that's sort of the thumbnail version of where things are right now at the state level.
And of course, none of us knows what's going to happen with the changes in administration at the federal level.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, right, that goes almost without saying at this point, yeah.
But thank you for that update. Are we ready to vote on this resolution? Those in favor? Any opposed? That's unanimous. I think that's all the resolutions, unless I skipped any other ones. I wonder if we could go and hear from administration on the Tompkins County departmental goals for 2025.
So I think the goals are presented today for finance and human resource. And Laurie, if you want to speak to your goals.
Sure. I don't know. Can I borrow it?
I'll need mine too.
Yeah. I did this a while ago. I don't remember exactly what they were. Okay. So the goals for finance for 2025 are to develop or update policies, specifically finishing up the procurement policy, working on the P card policy, and developing a new revenue recognition policy. We also are continuing to work to go live and roll out the OpenGov procurement module. We actually had our first training of a department yesterday on that. We're looking to implement the requisition and PO process for all purchases, and we have already started to do some background work on that. We're going to continue our quarterly department fiscal group meetings / trainings, and we did have one of those this past Monday where we talked about all things payroll. And we are in the process of implementing Debt Book, which is the debt management module that we recently purchased. We have given the software company all the information they need, and we have a kickoff call scheduled for next week.
Randy?
That's good stuff, Lori. My question is on the revenue recognition policy. If you could just give me a 2-sentence.
Sure. So as part of our discussions surrounding fund balance and getting, being able to estimate that, we need to have better real-time data. And currently there's a lag in many cases in getting the revenue information when claims are being done. And so what I'd like to do is implement a policy that tightens that up. So for example, maybe 30 days after the end of the quarter, that information gets to finance so we can have that information. Oftentimes it's 6-8 months before I'm getting that information. So I would like to tighten that up a little bit.
I agree with that 100%. I think focusing on our revenue is probably the first place that you should focus almost before expenses, because that's going to drive your expenses. And to understand what departments are billing, and which you may not see some of those things, in what grants they're working on, whatever revenue they're projecting, and I think that's great. So I'm glad you're doing that.
Deborah?
Yeah, thank you. You know, Lori, you and I have had numerous conversations about how we need to have some kind of requisition policy. And I just wondered, do you implement a requisition purchase order process? Are we going to have a policy for that, or?
I guess I wasn't anticipating a policy per se, more of a procedure. We need to roll it out to the departments, train them how to use that, you know, when it's appropriate, when it's not appropriate, which would be almost never, but different kinds of requisitions, a blanket requisition versus a normal requisition. So we will definitely have training surrounding that. If you'd like me to develop a policy, I can.
Well, I'm just unsure whether, about the relative weight and requirements of a policy versus a process. I know that sometimes your department gets a lot of pushback when you try to get people to follow the rules.
Yeah, I think we could certainly roll it into the procurement policy.
I think that might be a good idea.
That's a great idea.
What do you think, Corsa?
Yes, I think I have had a bit of conversation with Laurie about the process here. I'm still getting used to some element of it, and yeah, that will help to tighten up stuff and also provide. I think the training side of it is also very important, and for the department not to see a change as maybe adding to the work, but being a bit more efficient in many ways. So it's a whole approach, because I think from what I have gathered so far, some of those processes has not existed for many years. So getting departments to also adapt to those changing needs is very important. And it may be a bit slow, so we have to take our time in developing the guidance and the training and the policy. And as Laurie said, because we have a procurement policy in place, the processes, policy gathering concerning that can also be included in the procurement policy, but the process development is very important in the training aspect of it.
I have no doubt that the process is important. I would just like to see it recognized in a policy so that going forward, everybody understands that they need to follow that policy. I also think it would be helpful when we have these not unexpected pushback from departments that we explain or change our narrative so that people understand that these processes and policies are in place to protect the county, to protect us from getting spanked by the controller, to protect us from incurring financial obligations that aren't well documented, that might put us in the crosshairs of getting sued. I think there seems to be a misperception between finance and some of our departments that finance is just imposing rules because they're a pain in the butt. And that's not what's going on here. Compliance and controls are a really significant part of our government. And everybody needs to understand we have to work together to make sure that those are in place.
Thank you for that, Deborah. That's correct. Randy?
Yeah, I agree with that, Deborah. And also, we have a system now that everybody can use, and it's before it was very fragmented. People had different systems, so we have to embrace that system. One of the things that in our last budget year that, and I don't understand this, as I looked at some of the departments, I saw that they had millions of dollars in expected revenues in their budgets. And in some cases, the health department, not to pick on them, their budget for revenue was around $20 million. I'm just picking numbers. But through November, they had collected $10 million. So when I look at that, I don't know if that means there's accounts receivable out there for 8 months or
a deficit.
Or a deficit, or are we up to speed on billings? Are we behind on billings, those kinds of things. So I just wanted to share that. Of course, those are my concerns. So.
Yeah. Yes, and usually I think what usually happens from my past experience is these revenues are projections based on program and capacity within the department, and if they are not able to run those programs, they cannot claim the reimbursement for those. And with federal, sometimes a year and a half, 2 year delay in reimbursements, and state a couple of months, sometimes to a year delay in some kind of reimbursement. So it is important for us to have a clear understanding of where those resources are, and I don't know the flow at the moment in terms of reimbursement and the process to follow it up, and it's something that we need to also be aware if those reimbursements are going out and it's being followed up and where they are, and getting a constant update will also help.
Thank you.
Anything else, Ruby? I'm sorry. I'm still with Lori. Excuse me.
I think I'm good.
All right. I did notice the Department Equity Indicator here on your sheet about trying to encourage responses for MBE, MWBE, and other certification participation. That's a good goal.
So that's going to be part of the new OpenGov procurement module. That data will be collected when a vendor submits a response to a bid or RFP, and then we'll be able to run a report on that. And also, Charlene gave me a listing of regional MWBE vendors, and we are putting them in our system that will send out an email inviting them to sign up to receive the notices of bids and RFPs.
Good. Anything else for Lori here? Corsa, you want us to move on to human resources?
So to human resource, and I'll pivot to Ruby to set the ball rolling.
Okay. Our 2025 department goals will start with number 1, to research and initiate an RFP process to replace or update our existing applicant civil service software. This has been an issue since I've come here. We have 2 different applicant civil service systems that we have to work with in order to get accurate data and to get the reports out that we need. Our system was basically tailor-made to the county prior to any other software system being available. It is not mobile friendly, which most of our applicants can apply via their phone. There are certain kinks that we have to go behind the scenes to push applications forward, where an applicant may have thought that they had submitted an application, but it hadn't been accepted through the system. So it basically is an obsolete system, and we just haven't had the funding to replace it or to actually look into what we can do to update it. So that's priority for this year. We've actually started that process with several demonstrations, and we will be going through that for the rest of the year. The second department goal is to explore additional employer-sponsored benefits, such as parental leave, which was brought up last year when we were doing the voluntary supplemental benefits, wellness programs, and lower cost options for health insurance to aid in recruitment and retention and ensure compliance with the Affordable Health Care Act, considering the increased employee contributions. Last year's increases to the health coverage brought us almost to the threshold of affordability that's defined by the ACA. If it continues to increase, our lower paid employees won't be affordable for them, according to the formula that's set. So we have to look into those options. Not saying that we will do it or it has to be at this point, but we've started conversations with the consortium to actually look into a lower cost option, because if not, we will risk being not in compliance with the ACA. The third is develop a countywide training and staff development program to aid in employee engagement and identification of core competencies necessary for organizational excellence. We've already begun that with your approval of the training and development coordinator position in the office to supplement the loss of the actual county training fund. So that coordinator will be able to assess needs department-wise and offer and facilitate trainings that would benefit the county as a whole versus funding individual training requests. And again, it's important to employee engagement and important to retention. Anything that's professionally development to help them do their jobs better and to have some sort of promotional opportunities. Number 4 is to continue our department process improvements to increase efficiency and provide reliable data gathering and reporting, including the workflow process integration with Laserfish, position and vacancy reporting, recruitment and retention statistics, and workforce demographics. And that's a goal every year, is to improve our efficiency with the systems and operations that we have available. 5, continue to work with departments in alignment of staffing needs, functions, and goals. And this is important to us because we want to be a partner to the departments versus just a transactional office. We want to know about needs prior to them becoming emergencies and actually being able to sit with departments and say, okay, what do you need? Where are we going? How can we help? And that's everything from revising job descriptions to figuring out what positions that you have that may be transitioned to something else. May not be an increase in money, but maybe just a reallocation of assignments. Number 6, review and refine the legislature's direct report performance evaluation program. We should have our direct reports of first year stats and results by then, so we can refine what needs to be refined. 7, continue our collaboration with New York State Civil Service Department and the New York State Department of Labor to remove employment barriers and enhance recruitment and retention of a diverse, qualified workforce. Also listed under there is our department equity indicators and all of our goals. One of the indicators will be the demographic composition of staff with a focus on underrepresented groups and the retention rates and promotion of employees of diverse backgrounds as a first step.
Veronica, did you have a question? Okay. That's a very meaty list of goals. I appreciate your department's work on that. Questions for Ruby on them? Go ahead, Lee.
Are you looking at a large number of retirements in the next couple of years?
That's what we need to get our hands on. Right now, it's a matter of when we receive a notification. So there really hasn't been any planning from an HR standpoint, and typically not much planning from the department standpoint.
Wow.
So it's difficult to determine that, which is what we're hoping with more data gathering and more ability to predict with our vacancy reporting and our position reporting where the trends are.
Yeah, I'm just wondering about succession planning in a lot of places. I know there's an aging workforce out there.
Yes.
Thanks.
Yes.
I really like your emphasis on trying to work with and service the departments. I think that's so important. Deborah?
Yeah, thanks, Ruby. This is very meaty. I wanted to go back to your point, too. So am I understanding this correctly? If the healthcare costs, if the insurance costs go up, it's going to become unaffordable for our lower paid employees as affordability is defined by the ACA?
Correct.
What kind of consequences will fall on us if we don't meet the ACA's definition?
I don't know. All I know, we will be out of compliance. With those 1095 forms, I'm not sure, because we've never gotten to the point where it was this close.
What's a 1095 form?
1095Cs, which the employees receive, that basically says we've offered or we've provided health care.
Right.
And it shows whether you have accepted it or not. If you haven't accepted the offered, then because you have to have insurance,
Okay.
then they need they need to have said there's an alternative there.
It's got a little grid with
Alternative
12
include
months
Medicaid?
and
Maury, I don't know for sure. I think so, but as long as, I'm not sure.
Because that's a whole other
Yeah.
kettle of fish.
I'm not sure about
Okay.
that. I would have to get information from our benefits administrator for that.
Thanks, Ruby.
Okay. Can we, go ahead, Veronica.
Ruby, thanks for sharing this. What support do you need from this committee around your goals?
Right now, these are the goals that we think we can do with what we have, with the exception of when we come with a proposal for replacement of our software. That is definitely not in the budget.
Contingent fund.
Right. If you would notice, last year I began this conversation that this is something that we're going to have to look at. It's almost to the point where every day staff is having to go to the system to manipulate or do something to make sure that we have the applications. And from that applications comes all our civil service reporting. So it's not something that we can continue to put Band-Aids on.
It made me think of something. Our human resource department is handling civil service things for other entities, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
And so for all the schools, and I mean, so how, at some point, it'd be nice to know how much are we doing for other people?
And
Not
might
just
they
ourselves.
contribute?
What's that?
And might they contribute to the cost of the software?
The only entity that we can charge for would be Board of Education, something with the Education Department. And we have not done that. And I'm not sure, it's not set up that we can make it change in our authorization, but it has not been set up that way. Now, the report that Larry generally gives will show the number of applications for the county, the number of applications for the other entities. It'll also show a breakdown of basically what's county and what's not county.
Thank you.
So,
Anything else? Thank you, Ruby.
Does, Mike? I don't know if this is the appropriate committee. Does administration have goals?
Yes, we do have goals, and I'm working through that with my staff, and then we will present that. Usually we go through all the department goals, and our goals are more of a reflection of the broader department's goals.
That makes sense. Thank you.
Yes.
I think technically it would be government operations.
Yeah, well, that's why I wasn't sure. Thanks, Maureen.
Just mentioned there's a budget transfer on the, attached to the agenda for information only, and that's training funds transfer. And I'd like to go back and maybe and start talking about our goals for this committee for this year. And I'm going to open it up and ask for people to make suggestions of what they'd like to see us working on this year, besides everything else we do. Deborah.
Yeah, aside from just surviving whatever is going on in Washington, I think we're going to have to be a little more reactive this year than proactive. I think the proactive thing.
Can you talk up just a little?
Sure. I think we're going to have to be a little more reactive than proactive this year. I don't know if any of you were at the Tiger meeting, But one of the things we learned from our NISAC people was that the governor's budget did not include any planning for a reduction of state aid or federal aid to the state, which means, according to our NISAC folks, that the state may well pass a budget, and then, depending on what Washington does, they're going to have to go back into session and amend the budget. And the assessment from NISAC, as well as the Charlie Krasansky from Cornell and Diane Miller, was that that would be, to put it kindly, a circus. Dumpster fire and a couple of other things come to mind. So there's going to be intense lobbying, and NISAC as a representative of the counties is going to be competing with a lot of lobbyists. That doesn't bode well for us. So we need to be prepared for that. I think the one thing I would like us to be proactive about is reevaluating our budget process. I think shifting to zero-based budgeting all at once would probably be too much of a shock for the county and our departments, especially in the larger environment in which we're going to have to function. But I think it would be wonderful if we could start evaluating what kind of options sit in a sweet spot between this expectation we've fostered that target will always be there and never be reduced and never be reevaluated versus zero-based budgeting. There's got to be something in the middle that we should be looking at, or finding some way for us to review target on a regular basis and see where it can be cut to accommodate the addition of new programs and new staff.
I like that, Deborah, and hopefully that when we have this retreat with the consultant, that'll be the opening for that.
Thank you.
Shauna.
I think one thing that we talk about, or we've talked about in this committee, is recruiting employees. But I also think there should be a conversation on how to retain our employees. We talk about being an employer of choice, and with new employees coming in as a tier 6, that is some of the worst retirement. I mean, you could work at Wegmans, you might even be able to work at Walmart and have better retirement than what is, well, they have a 401k, which is performing a lot better than some of our tier 6 stuff. And so, I mean, I think we really need to have the conversation about how to keep the back door closed, because Larry could work his butt off trying to fill all of our open positions. But if people aren't happy with our benefits, with what it's like to be a county employee, and we're not looking at those metrics, then he's never going to be able to recruit enough people to keep us fully staffed. I think the other part, I am also concerned about the upcoming year. We've heard from Cornell, we've also seen in the news that Cornell's research funding is being jeopardized right now. Their NIH funding, and they are a research institution. And so, you know, as much as we like to gripe about Cornell and the things that they don't do, they definitely do a lot for our community. They bring much revenue into Tompkins County, and we need to realize the fact that if they're not going to be the fine research institute that they've always been, we could all be seeing some hard times ahead. The other thing that's of concern is that 30% of their students are international students, and if there's a travel ban, then people will not be able to come back to our community once they leave for the summer. That could also have some damaging impacts. One of the things that NISAC talked about was the fact that New York is the biggest recipient of Medicaid funds from the federal government. Oh, yeah. I believe it was, I want to say 77 billion?
I can't remember. It was
that
a mind-bogglingly large number.
And that's the total amount that states receive from the federal government, but New York receives quite a bit of that. There could be, we're seeing the optics right now play out, and I'm concerned that at some point the state funding, they're already talking about doing cuts to Medicaid. So that could definitely rely more on the state and the county to pick up the tab for that. And then, of course, we all know about the fact that we have 2 department heads that are really crucial, 2 really big departments, whole health and DSS. And the hiring of 2 dynamic people is going to be key for us to have good customer service and really offer the services that we want to here in our county.
Good. Those are good suggestions. I hope we're able to kind of put them down together so we can have a list here. Randy?
Yeah, I think that we should be planning for the federal government to start sending money. We're spending $1.8 trillion more than we're bringing in. We wouldn't do that here. We wouldn't overspend what we're bringing in. And we can't continue to spend this kind of money because it's hurting the people that, not us, but the people that are going to be paying this bill, my daughter, her kids. I mean, we can't continue to spend money like this. It's not responsible. But so I think that we should be reactive. I think I would agree with that, Deborah. And I don't know about zero-based budgeting. I'm not sure if I know what that is. But I think that each department should be looking at retaining their best employees that they can. In my businesses where I've been the person that's gone in and dealt with a company losing lots of money, and it was about a survival. Cortland Line had 65 employees. They're losing $1 million a year, doing $7 million in business. How do you do that? I don't know how you do that, but so they didn't, obviously. So they were going bankrupt. And this investment company bought them from New York City. Didn't like some of those people, but they hired me, and it was tough. Health insurance was a big deal, and I unfortunately had to reduce the employee count to make it work. Surprisingly, our savior was Walmart. Because they embraced American-made products, and we got products from 400 stores to 1,800 stores, and that helped us so much. And so I think the challenge we're going to have to deal with is justifying every employee that we have, because that's where our expenses are. And I think that's where this committee could come into play is whatever department it is, saying, we need all these people, right? But there's going to be, they may have to be in a situation to say, if I had to cut something, this is where I would. So that's my thoughts.
Back to Deborah, then I want to take a turn.
Yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned the federal debt, Randy. I don't know that there's anything we can do about it, but I think we need to be aware that the budget that the Republicans have submitted would increase the debt ceiling by $4 trillion, largely to accommodate tax cuts to the wealthy. Welcome to America.
We really need to be thinking even more than we have been about our homeless population and the cuts we're going to have in service for people who are the most vulnerable, and that would be people who have dependencies, substance dependencies, people have mental health issues, and this all comes together. And we also need to be thinking about the immigrants here who are being terrorized by our government, and I know I'm using that word because I really think it's true. They're afraid to leave their homes. They're afraid to call the doctor, ask questions. They're afraid to go to the grocery store. And we can't overlook the fact that Tompkins County may have to respond in ways we aren't even thinking about to help that population, those populations in some way. because the money's not going to come in from the state. We know that. The new Attorney General had announced yesterday that they're going to sue New York State. They don't like our policies of not arresting and turning over people to them to deport, so they can send them to Guantanamo or whatever. So we don't know what's going to happen. And from a budget standpoint and the goals here, I think we need to have a goal that is to keep open-minded and nimble to be able to respond to the things that come along. We don't know what they're going to be yet, but we ought to be prepared for the unexpected. Others?
That's not enough?
I could go on, but I'm not going to. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think one thing that we should have a conversation on is the fact that we're seeing from the federal government that they're really wanting to provide consequences for communities that are valuing diversity, equity, and inclusion. And what is our stance going to be? You know, historically, we've valued that as a county. We've valued that as an employer. You know, my gut says, let's double down on it. You know, if we're not going to have that on the federal level and we're not going to have that support, you know, one thing that I think draws people to work here in Tompkins County and to work for our county is specifically to have the programs that we have. So I think it would be a positive thing for us to really showcase the programming that we have, the fact that we fund a position. We're going to have more conversations about the Office of Human Rights and how they can serve our community better. But I think it is important for us to continue to talk about those programs and make sure that our community knows that we have them.
Other goals? Deborah?
Yeah, I have to say that I'm not sure doubling down is the best strategy here. I mean, we already have programs and priorities in place. I think doubling down by somehow publicly reaffirming our commitment or whatever else to what we're already doing and what we intend to continue doing simply waves a red flag at a bull that is bound and determined to try to use every method it can to smash up our China shop. I see what the federal government seems to be trying to do is kind of like putting communities that have commitments to DEI under siege by threatening or actually withholding funding. I think we need to try to walk a fine line between continuing to do what we've already committed to do and not attracting undue attention so that it becomes more likely that we'll be targeted for funds being withheld. Because at some point, we're not going to be able to afford the programs that we have without state and federal funding. I mean, if you've studied like medieval warfare and siege strategies, eventually you run out of the ability to maintain your sovereignty. I don't want to wave any red flags. I want to keep doing what we're doing, but I want to try to stay under the radar. Right now, the lawsuits that the DOJ has filed in Illinois and California and now in New York have been fairly moderate compared to the rhetoric that we're hearing from the co-presidency of Trump and Musk. You know, they're only suing governors and county executives and mayors in their representative capacity. They're only seeking injunctive and declaratory relief. I would like to stay under the radar and let them pursue that because I don't think they're going to get very far with it. Although I guess it's possible to have a little too much faith in our judicial system under the circumstances. But I would just urge my colleagues to be cautious. I don't like what's happening. I don't agree with what's happening. I don't want to change our values and our commitments, but I don't want to attract any more attention than we already have.
Veronica.
I hear you on the fears of losing federal funding and attracting retribution. I'm going to completely disagree with your conclusion, probably unsurprisingly, and agree with Shauna that I think we should double down and commit to the diversity and inclusion efforts. And some of my thinking on this is, one, we already attracted attention real quick with, you know, the DOJ putting out a note, like a not really true notice, scathingly talking about our sheriff specifically. And I think that, I don't think that staying under the radar is probably going to work. In a bunch of the conversations I'm having about the wild things happening with the federal government right now, something that keeps coming up is that the people at the helm are pushing boundaries. This is happening on a federal government level, but it's similar to a dynamic that just one, say, an individual narcissist might do in interpersonal interactions, is push boundaries, test it, and see if anyone pushes back. And if not, just go further and further and further. So pushing back might not succeed, but not pushing back doesn't help. Like the assaults on trans people, on racial inclusion, I mean, they're wild, talking about, we have government policies talking about wokeness. What does that even mean? I don't think they're not coming from a place of like logic and good faith and shared reality. And so I don't think that we should respond as if they are. The other piece is I'm hearing from community members that it really is valuable to hear governments make statements about, like, hey, we're still committed to you, to like our inclusiveness policies, our policies that we don't discriminate on this, that, and the other. And I think it's easy for us, very much myself included, to say, like, but we've made these statements, we have these policies, the government is doing this, that, and the other. Like, why do we need to say it again if we're not changing what we're doing? But I think most people in our community, they're not paying that much attention. They're like doing their own thing, having their own lives. They have no idea necessarily what our county's diversity policies are. And maybe they could go look it up, but that's hard to do. And how do you know that you're seeing the most recent thing? And I think it really makes people feel a lot better in both like an emotional way, but also in a like trust in government way. Maybe I like making a material difference if someone, for instance, hears that their county government says, reaffirms that, for instance, trans people are people and gender affirming care is health care, then maybe they won't be afraid to go interact with the health department or call the sheriff's office or something for something unrelated because they've recently been told, oh, this isn't going to get me at risk for getting swooped up into the anti-trans who knows what. Sounds kind of wild, but there's a lot of who knows what going on. And I think these are like very reasonable fears that people have of, I don't know what's going to happen if I interact with government.
We're approaching the end of our time.
Okay, yeah, sorry. So, yeah, I don't think we should be afraid of poking the bear, basically, because the bear is already wilding out. And I think statements from our government make more of an impact to the public than we realize from the inside of it.
Thank you. Any other goals that we should be putting down? Doesn't mean we can't come up with goals as we go along during the year, but anyone else we want to put on the list to begin with? Okay.
Just,
you want to say something, Lee?
Just a kind of a continuing thing, the capital program and trying to look at the long-term implications of some of the planning projects that we've got going on right now. Center of government, the public safety building, you know, that we've run into some recent snags with even public works funding for bridges. So
So what you're saying is you'd like us to keep track of the financial implications of, like, the center of government, the public safety building, the roads and bridges, and other things, the airport.
Yeah, specifically, yeah.
I think that's a good goal. I just heard town of Dryden got 2 bridge projects going. One's the footbridge over Route 13, and the other is Freeze Road. And both of the bids are coming in much larger than they thought, because there's all of a sudden this worry about the price of steel.
25%.
Well, Highway just pulled a project out in my district.
I think
Estimated
that's a reasonable goal.
2.1, and now it's 2.8, and it's
Anyone else?
stopped.
I think it would be helpful once Corsa receives the information back from department heads as far as what is federally funded, for him to send that to this committee. It would be nice to see. Well, not nice to see, but informative.
Well, I think the whole legislature probably needs to see it.
Yeah.
Brittany, when you are able to distill these down, these goals, maybe you could send them out for us to review and wait before the minutes, and so that we can just see that they're what we want to have said.
Absolutely.
As a group. Okay, thank you for that. Anything else before we adjourn? We are adjourned.
Thank you, Mike.